Hello and welcome to Doha, home to the IAAF World Championships. We're back on the famous Corniche circuit in the capital for the second night of race walking at this historic World Championships, the first to be staged here in the Middle East. Now, in warm and humid conditions, the 50k walkers went literally through the night to achieve their goals. And tonight, it's the 20-kilometre race for women. It's hello from Tony Husband. Once again, I'm joined by an endurance specialist with a decorated career, two-time Olympic marathon runner and Commonwealth Games medalist, Liujing.
Hi Tony, it's great to be back again. The start list tells us we could see a clean sweep of the medals today, which has never happened before in this event. That would be from China. But the brilliant youngster Liujing from Ecuador could well be right up there.
Good indeed. Lots more from Mara to come, and if you're new to race walking, we'll explain what to look for and the key rules as the competition unfolds under the lights here on the Corniche. So as the clock ticks to midnight local time, our feature tonight from the Qatari coastline, the women's 20-kilometre race walk. And from those beautiful shots of the coastline, it's down to the racecourse and the final preparations and consultations no doubt nearby with coaches, fans watching on as well. The all-important support staff will be there. It's often those voices from the side that can keep those athletes going. It will be challenging, it will be warm out there for them. It will be one of the biggest tests in their careers. But the prize at the end of it, a podium position, and of course, a gold medal round the neck of a new world champion. Here's the circuit then that they'll face tonight. It's along the waterfront area and palm-fringed boulevard. It's known as the Corniche here in Doha. The route starts and heads south. The government building, the Amiri Diwan in the distance for them. The walkers will loop back, the bright lights of the city on the horizon at this point, before a second turn back up towards their starting point. Now, hopefully, they'll pass the penalty zone on the way. We'll have more on that shortly. In all, there are 20 laps of 1 kilometre to crown a world champion on the Corniche tonight. Now, lots of focus, of course, on the weather, which has been very, very closely monitored all day once more. The athletes were expecting heat, and even at approaching midnight, they've certainly got it along with humidity. Tonight, 31 Celsius. It's a clear evening in the Qatari capital with a very, very light wind. The course illuminated from one end to the other against the backdrop of the city skyline. It's a sensational sight here. So there's the start line. Many of these race walkers will have seen what happened last night. I'm sure learn some lessons. The event records as we go into the women's 20-kilometre race walk. Well, the world record holder is in the field. We'll talk about Hong Liu from China. And the Chinese, well, could they indeed sweep the board here at this 20k race walk tonight? What do you think about the lessons that will be learned from last night, Mara?
I think the athletes racing today will certainly have taken on board some of what we saw yesterday. For example, the slower pace than usual, many athletes using ice and water to cool themselves down, and of course what the course is like. But today's race is much shorter, 20 kilometres, and so many may want to push the boat out a bit and race a little bit more aggressively.
Yes, I think that's going to be really interesting to see just how tactically this race unfolds, and we'll be able to contrast it with what we saw last night.
Absolutely.
Mara's going to be alongside me for the whole of this race, and it's a big field as well. Let's take a look at how many are on that start line. 45 in all on the start list, and they come from 31 countries and all regions of the world. It does show how strong the race walking community is. The youngest athlete in the field, well, there are 3 19-year-olds in there. The Chinese will present a formidable group. There are 4 in all in this field, and as we mentioned, could they pull off a medal sweep? The oldest athlete is a 40-year-old on a night where tonight as well we'll see East Africa represented with a Kenyan on the page as well. There's a very strong lineup from Turkey and Spain. The Europeans are here in force. Ukraine have a veteran in their pair of entrants, and the US are represented too. Down there on the start line. Let's have a look at one or two of the athletes that will be featuring and could well be contenders in the next 90 minutes or so that we expect this course to be completed in by the leading athletes. Now on the right-hand side of the screen here, well, Japan had a great night last night in the men's 50K with Suzuki carrying off victory. Well, there's Kumiko Okada. She's the Japanese record holder, and the 27-year-old looks like a very strong prospect tonight. I'm sure the likes of Suzuki will have set the example which she will want to follow. And of course, a year out from the Olympic Games as well in Tokyo, Okada will want to lay down a marker here tonight. And she looks pretty excited. She gets ready to start. Now, just inside of there, the short figure of Glenda Morekon. Now, this is an Ecuadorian superstar in the making, a really talented youth walker. If you've seen some of our IAAF broadcasts from youth and junior events over the last few years, you would have seen Morekon really starring. She's the fastest ever South American woman over 20K. The Brazilian on your screen there right now, Erica de Sena, 34 years of age, third at the World Team Championships last year in Qieyang in China. She's a national record holder as well. But here is the favorite, perhaps the 32-year-old Chinese athlete, the world record holder and twice a world champion as well, Liu Hong. Look out for the 32-year-old, who is sure to be up there in the reckoning. Maria Perez is the 2018 European champion at the age of 23. She's a national record holder from that real stronghold of a Spanish team, hoping to maintain their tradition of success.
And finally,
here's the defending world champion, Yang Zhou, who won in a really thrilling race back in London just 2 years ago at the last IAAF World Championships. She looks to be one of those who we'll be watching out for in this 20K race walk. But don't discount a surprise or two along the way as well. This is an unpredictable event. These are not quite unique conditions, but certainly very challenging ones for many of these race walkers from all around the globe. 45 of them on the start line there, getting their final instructions on the corniche. Fully illuminated again. This is our second evening of race walking at these World Championships. Fingers poised on the stopwatches. There goes the gun, and we're underway, Mara. And the challenge is in front of them.
Absolutely. It was fascinating watching the 50K last night and how the athletes coped with the hot weather conditions. A lot of them were using ice cubes, a lot of water on their heads, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of that today. But of course, this race is much shorter, only 20K. And on the right-hand side of your shots there, right at the front, is Njue of Kenya. She's the oldest in this field, 40 years old. She's a multiple Pan-African Games champion. And interesting to see some African athletes in this field. She's joined by an Ethiopian athlete as well. Race walking really is a global sport. We have athletes from Central and South America, Europe, China and Japan representing Asia, and those African athletes. So a really global event at these World Athletics Championships. China, of course, have 4 athletes in the race. Most countries would have, well, the maximum number any one country can send is 3, except where you have the defending champion or a Diamond League winner, that sort of thing. So Yang Zhou is the defending champion from last time. That's why China have 4. And if you look at the season's best, for all these athletes, number 1 is Glenda Morekon of Ecuador, and then 2 to 5 are the Chinese athletes. So I mentioned earlier a possible Chinese clean sweep. We saw a 1-2 yesterday from the women in the 50K walk. So we could see more Chinese medals today, but plenty of opposition, including from that youngster Morekon. A lot of the juniors as well coming through into the senior ranks. We mentioned the 3 19-year-olds. There are also those 3 19-year-olds, the youngest in the field. Katie Hayward of Australia, Marekon, who we already mentioned, and Bekmez of Turkey, and also 3 20-year-olds, Fuji of Japan, Okada's teammate, Guerra of Peru, and Tekdal, also of Turkey. We just saw the athletes already taking on water, so wasting no time in trying to cool themselves down and rehydrating. It's a 1 kilometer loop, and they have a personal refreshment station where they can leave anything they want within reason. Yesterday we saw all manner of things being taken from those tables. They're manned by team officials and coaches, and then there will also be general refreshment stations, so providing water and sponges.
I'm not going to talk to you, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be shy in talking to you about the kind of things they're going to need to take on board, the use of ice, the use of sponges, the kind of drinks, as you say, as the fans watch on here on the Corniche and lend their support to these women walkers tonight. It is fascinating to see how each individual walker decides to dress almost, isn't it? Because we saw towels around the neck, we saw a lot of headgear last night, not so much of that at the moment out there. It's very similar temperatures, isn't it, to what we saw when we were here last night?
Absolutely, just about the same temperature. There's a little bit of a breeze, as we saw on the weather earlier, and already there we just saw a yellow paddle from one of the judges. So a yellow paddle is an advisory caution. It doesn't lead to disqualification. And there are 8 judges out there on the course. We'll bring you a full explanation of the rules very soon, but very quickly into this race we've seen 1 yellow paddle. So just a caution there. It's only the red cards which lead to disqualification.
Yes, that's right, and we will explain all of that for you as we'll take a little look just at the yellow paddle. But don't think of this in as far as that there's any problem, or not such a problem, but there's any actual sanction for this yellow paddle. That is purely a warning from one of the judges. Now, there are 9 judges all around this course. One of them is a chief judge who stays around the penalty zone area. It doesn't want to stay on the penalty zone and the kind of time penalties that you face if you go in there as we go on. But just actually to strip it right back, what race walking actually is defined as, it's a progression of steps so taken that the walker makes contact with the ground so that no visible, and this is to the eye, loss of contact occurs. Now the advancing leg's got to be straightened from the moment of first contact with the ground until the vertical upright position. Technique is so important, and this is what marks race walking out from really pretty much any other sport. You have to maintain your technique, and so that always puts a question on when you need to advance and get quicker, and it means you can't necessarily push it too far. Sena is out there in front at the moment, the Brazilian in the early stages, just 5 minutes into this race. They're probably, as they have 19 laps to go now, and they're through 1 kilometre, probably about another 85 minutes or so before they will reach the end. Well, there is a card system in place. We've mentioned paddles. We've just seen another paddle come out there at the back there. There are 2 ways, as Mara, you mentioned there, the bent knee warning and the loss of contact. But I mentioned judges as well. They are the eagle eyes. It's on what they see. It's not on technology. And we can have a look at a group of judges who are out there, and they're quite busy so far as well. There they are: Anne Froberg, Wang Tak-feng, Yang Zhongming, and Jose Julio Barbosa Diaz. That's the first 4. They're spread across this course. Then there's Kirsten Crocker, Marianne Daniel. Noel Carmody is the recorder, so he will be down by the penalty zone, making sure that the cards and infringements are tallied up. Steve Taylor completes the other judges. And a little explainer, we mentioned yellow paddles. Well, a yellow paddle is purely advisory. It's when red cards are issued, which goes up on the big screen, that athletes will have to be mindful, because the athlete will enter the penalty zone for 2 minutes, a 2-minute penalty effectively for 3 red cards, and they can be applied for either a bent knee or a loss of contact. If you get a 4th red card, that is the end of your race walk. It is an automatic disqualification. we saw several disqualifications last night in the men's 50K. Now, a new innovation at this IAAF World Championships, we have got body cams on 2 key officials. The race walking chief judge, Daniel Michaud, there on the left, and Dolores on the right-hand side. And it is Daniel who is going to be the person who eventually will deliver the ultimate sanction of bringing a walker into the penalty zone, or indeed to tell them that the race is over with a disqualification. And for the first time, we're going to get an opportunity, Mara, I think, of just seeing exactly what they are going to see, the view from their eyes.
That's right. This time is the first time we've had body cams on judges, so we'll see a judge's eye view, if you like, of a race walk competition underway. One of the 2 parts of the rules of race walking is loss of contact, as you explained earlier. But it's judged by the naked eye. They don't use cameras or anything, any electronic equipment. Is all down to the naked eye. And the naked eye can identify approximately above 40 milliseconds of loss of contact. So a lot of these athletes will actually be breaking contact a tiny, tiny bit, but anything over roughly 40 milliseconds will be spotted by the judges, and that will lead to a red card. The yellow paddles, as we said, do not lead to disqualification. That's simply a caution from the judges saying, I'm watching you, I think you're maybe breaking the rules, be careful, as it were.
Yes, I think it's a really good point, and as you mentioned, it is the eagle eye of the judges that will be watching. Saw one of them just on the screen there. Also the water stations. Of course, in any race walk, this is an absolutely crucial part of the course. This is where the walkers will, of course, get their refreshments. And in the warm and humid conditions that we have, and with a midnight start, as we've already rolled into Monday here, local time now in Qatar, there is an awful lot of fluid being taken on. The bottles are flying everywhere. There's debris everywhere, and you can see in the background, out come the officials, the volunteers, doing a great job, because they've got to clear that road and try and leave the way for all of them to do. And that's a mighty challenge. I think we've got the better deal sitting in here describing it, rather than trying to clear all those bottles.
Yeah, so the drink stations typically, so I come from a marathon background where we have the similar drink stations, and it can be chaos. As we just saw there was a big group there. One person dropped what they were collecting and had to stop and pick it up. So could be tripping, could be people falling over, others being barged. So these athletes really have to take care when they're at these drink stations.
I thought just to notice what we saw there as well, almost in unison, as this front group went across that finish line. You can see in the background, most of them glanced down at their watch. They're looking at their pacing as well. We did the first kilometre, the leaders at least, the Brazilian de Senna, took them through in 5 minutes and 2 seconds. And progressively, of course, there's another group off the back who are already starting to lose touch with the leaders. So interesting that pace, of course, is going to be quicker, but how much quicker? How much are they going to push it out? This is known as more of a speed event within race walking after the total marathon, effectively, of the 50K, isn't it?
Absolutely, the 50K really is a tough endurance event. It's the world record is just outside 3:30 or 3.5 hours for the men, and the women have just broken 4 hours. Liu Hong, who's in this race, is the world record holder for 50K and 20K. But the 20 kilometre is very much the sprint out of these 2 events. The world record, Liu Hong's world record in the 20K walk is 1:24:38, which equates to roughly just under 4:15 per kilometre. If you go out and walk as fast as you possibly can, you'd be amazed how fast these women are walking. My top speed for walking is about 9 minutes per kilometre, and they're going more than twice that speed. So pretty extraordinary, the speeds they go at.
You do 9. I'd say I'm in double figures. Don't you worry about that. Just the early leader there to mention then is Qieyang Shenjie of China, the 28-year-old. That front pack, though, including the Kenyan as well. We talked about the paddles. Remember that the rule with yellow paddles, this is just a warning. Let's take a look at another example of a paddle coming out. So here we go there. There is one very early in the race for Castro. And here's another one. And you can see the mark, the ident effectively on that paddle. It was a squiggle effectively, best way to describe it really, and that is loss of contact. So that is what they're looking at there. Castro back in the live shot there on the right of the screen, one of those to be warned, but you can go through a race and Mara, you can get as many paddles as you like. It's the red cards that's going to cause you a problem.
That's right, each judge can only show each athlete one paddle for loss of contact and one paddle for knee. So there are 8 judges on the course, so in theory each athlete could receive 16 yellow paddles, 8 for each of the infringements. But that's very unusual. But once you've been shown a yellow paddle, that shows that the judges are watching you and you may be getting a red card soon. But still, that group very, very bunched up. It's difficult for the judges to detect loss of contact when the walkers are in such a big group like that. It's just so difficult.
The Chinese flags are already flying here on the Corniche early on a Monday morning, and one of the tactics that we thought might well occur appears to be, we are early days in this race, we're 2 kilometers in, 18 more to go, remember, on a 1 kilometer looping circuit, but the Chinese often could potentially gang up, they could go out as a quartet, and they could stretch the field, they could push it early and move away from the rest and effectively lay down the challenge to say, well, we're going to move away and you're going to have to work hard to keep up with us. Well, on this occasion, as you see Descender there, she wanted her bottle thrown. She found herself on the right of the screen there. She's nowhere near her drink station, so you saw that bottle come over, but she dropped it, and she's going to have to wait to go all the way around again. But the Chinese, as I just mentioned, they have decided to just stay with the pack for the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty chaotic at this drink station, isn't it? So that was the general drink station, just with water provided. The personal refreshment station is where they've provided their own drinks, but still very bunched up. But I think we can expect to see the Chinese helping each other out. They have got an absolutely formidable lineup. So Liu Hong, the world record holder over 20k and 50k, she's just back from maternity leave back in 2017 and 18. She has 4 medals from previous World Championships. She was the winner in 2011 in Daegu and also in 2015 in Beijing, and then she also won silver medals in 2013 in Moscow and 2009 in Berlin. She's also the reigning Olympic champion from the 2016 Rio Olympics, and she won bronze at London 2012. So absolutely formidable athlete. She's only recently moved up to the 50k, but on her debut, she set a world record, 3:59.15, and she's currently 6th on the world rankings. And her teammate, Shenjie Qieyang, she currently is top of the world rankings. On the right of your picture there, wearing the sunglasses. She won the silver medal at the London 2012 Games. She won the bronze medal in the Daegu 2011 World Championships, and she set a PB in La Coruña back in earlier this year, in the summer this year. However, she was defeated, both she and Liu Hong were defeated by the young Ecuadorian Glenda Morejon.
And that is one of our subplots, isn't
it,
tonight?
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have also in the Chinese team is the defending champion, Yang Jiayu, and also their 4th team member, Yang Liujing. So slightly confusingly, 2 Yangs in the Chinese team. We don't think they're sisters or related. And you just see Liujing Yang there behind Qieyang, and Bekmez there at the front. She's one of the Turkish athletes.
Yes, I've seen Bekmez come through some of the IAAF under 18 age group events and under 20s as well. The Turks are strong in race walking. They're very quickly out there. Was one of the judges to issue another yellow paddle. Had to move fast there, didn't he? He was quick on his feet.
Absolutely.
I think I'd like to card him, there might have been a bit of loss of contact from him. He moved so fast.
Yeah. We were talking to the chief judge earlier before the race got underway, and he was telling us that this is a 1 kilometre loop, and there are 8 judges on it, spread at about 50 to 60 metres. Well, they have to cover about 50 to 60 metres of the course. Yesterday in the 50k, the lap was 2k long with 8 judges. So clearly 8 judges over 1k, they're going to see a fair bit more than if they're more spread out.
There's another warning there, just from one of the judges. And when we talk about the judges, I think this is worth seeing. We have this camera that is, there it is. And you can see the little thing on the right of the screen, by the way, is Daniel Michaud's glasses. It's just to prove to you it genuinely is right up by his eyes. And the Canadian chief judge, he's got that view and he's monitoring everything. He's got the recorder, Noel Carmody as well there with him, who will be collating all the cards that come round. And we have had a couple of red cards. They're further back down the field at the moment, but an athlete from Brazil, Lyra, and also Smerdova, who is here as an authorized neutral athlete, they have got red cards so far. So those are official penalties, and of course if they accrue 3 of those cards, they will go into the penalty zone. Bekmez, though, out in the lead in this women's 20-kilometre race walk at this stage. I wanted to ask you a question, going back to your competition in marathon. So we have the 4 Chinese there, and they're pretty much very, very close at hand as they get some refreshment. Would it be daunting for you if you knew there was a quite strong contingent from one country, that you knew that for potentially, well, in your case, a couple of hours, we're going to be working together? Would that affect you at all as you lined up?
The working together thing, for me, that was never too much of a concern. However, any country which has filled its allowed 3 slots, or occasionally 4 if you have the defending champion on your team, what that says is this country is really good in this event. They can field 3 or 4 athletes, and there may be others who've qualified who weren't selected. So if a country has many athletes who've qualified, then it becomes much more competitive to get on the team, and the standard goes up. So in this race, we've got full teams from China and a full team from Spain. Spain has 3 athletes, China 4 with that defending champion. But then several other countries have 2 athletes in the field. So they are Australia, Brazil, Ecuador, Guatemala, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Turkey and Ukraine. So that's an indication of which the really strong countries are if they can field more than 1 athlete. Quite a few countries not represented here at all. So where you have none or 1 representatives, clearly the standard of race walking is going to be lower. So the fact that they've got full teams suggests they mean business. And of course they got a 1-2 yesterday in the 50k as well.
That's a beautiful scene. As you can see now, the groups, we've got the leading pack at the front there, and a few just trying to hang on to that group. Plenty of paddles being shown in the early stages here. I must say the judges are a lot busier at this stage of this race than they were in the 50k race, which of course was at a slower pace last night on the Corniche. It's warm out there again, but they're going at a fair pace as well. Paddles being shown, remember they're a warning, but what about red cards and just how they are collated? A walker will not actually see a red card, but what will happen is a judge will note down the infringement, and they will file that, and that will go back to the penalty zone where Noel Carmody, who is the British, in this case, recorder, is working alongside Daniel Michaud, the chief judge. And once that is all collated and confirmed, the red card will go up onto the scoreboard. The key thing there, we didn't show you the judge either, the key thing is that these athletes, they don't know which judge has given them a red card. So they won't be aware of which one it is that has actually felt that they have caused an infringement. They will know when they warn them with a paddle, like we've just seen again in the background there, not when it's the distribution of a card. I also mentioned about the 3 red cards and then a 4th for disqualification, Mara, but I think one interesting point is that in the last 100 meters, the chief judge, Daniel Michaud, well, I mean, he carries the ultimate power, doesn't he? He can step in and actually outright disqualify someone.
Yes, that's right. So in the last 100 meters of the race, Daniel Michaud, the chief judge, can disqualify an athlete outright if they appear to be breaking the rules, regardless of how many red cards they already have. So they could have 0 red cards and they get this instant disqualification in the last 100 meters. The athlete is allowed to finish in those circumstances in case there is an appeal lodged afterwards. So this is really to avoid a scenario where several athletes are sprinting for the line and completely lose their technique and break the rules. But other than in that 100 meters, at the end, it's the whole course, and when they get 3 cards, they're into the penalty zone, in this case for 2 minutes, and if they get a 4th card, it's a straight disqualification.
Well, let's have a look at that penalty zone. You mentioned it there, Mara. I mean, there is the chief judge, Daniel Michaud, and he's standing just outside it. And you can see his little camera there on his ear. That's what we're seeing when we cut to the camera, and that is the penalty zone. And there's a screen there, and that's his view looking up towards the finish line and watching these walkers, keeping an eagle eye on things. He was very pleased and happy with how things went. And there is the penalty zone. So if you go in there, you've got to spend 2 minutes keeping yourself loose, of course, getting a chance. They do have a drink station in there as well, which you don't always have in a penalty zone. And then you swing round to the board there, Mara, and that obviously is for the athletes. They will know by number, they'll know their number. They'll probably know one of their rivals' numbers as well. A few of them, they know what they've done wrong. And it's all loss of contact apart from a bent knee, I think, up there on the left, isn't it?
Yeah, number 133. Yeah, that's Smerdova of the neutral athlete. Yeah, so the athletes will have been able to look at the scoreboard before the start and see where their number is, so that they know where to look to see if they've got any red cards. But also, I wonder if they might have team officials monitoring that board and shouting at them. So 3 athletes so far on 1 red card. What was really interesting yesterday in the 50K was that in the men's race we saw loads of red cards, several disqualifications, several penalty zone instances. But in the women's race, only 1 red card, I think it was. So no disqualifications, no penalty zone from the women. But here, right from the beginning, we've had several yellow paddles and already 3 red cards. I think possibly, obviously in the 20K, the speed is faster, and therefore, if athletes are going at a speed beyond where they can maintain contact with the ground, then they're in more danger of getting a red card.
So Bekmez glancing along at her rivals there. A little look down at the ground as well from the Turk on the right of the screen. Qieyang of China, and then Morechon just adjusting something on the top of her headgear, the young, talented Ecuadorian. There at the front there. We're 4 kilometers into this race, or 5 kilometers now into this race, and they've gone through that 5 kilometer mark in 24 minutes and 1 second. And the leading time, and the first athlete to cross the line when they took the split times, is the Chinese athlete there, Qieyang, and she is averaging at the moment 4:48 per kilometre.
That gives a estimated finish time of about 1:36. So if we consider that the world record is 1:24 and under 1:30 is considered to be very good, but they're on 1:36 pace, so somewhat slower than what we would expect. But bear in mind that these are quite challenging conditions to be competing in. Yesterday we saw Yusuke Suzuki win the men's race in 4:04. His personal best is just over 3.5 hours, so almost half an hour off his best time. And certainly I don't think we'll be expecting to see any PBs in these outdoor races. But
of course we did see as well, Mara, I thought the contrast in tactics. So we saw the Japanese walker in Suzuki really get out there and lead. But then there was Canada's Evan Dunphy, great moment for him, a bronze medal. But he timed it pretty well, really, didn't he? Because he hung back in the pack for a while and then just moved through and glided past a lot of his rivals.
That's right. I think in the 50K, that's a really good strategy because it's such a long race in hot conditions. You know, you really have to conserve your energy. But in the 20K, you know, it's fast and furious from the start. It's only an hour and a half, or there, give or take. And as we can see, they're walking really fast. They're walking about the pace that Suzuki was doing yesterday, leading the men's 50K, so considerably faster from these 20K women.
Well, there are high hopes for the Chinese. Now there's, of course, a very congested group there. There's a lot of feet at very close quarters, and that can often lead to a little bit of a stumble and a catch of the feet, and you can see it there. Now that just on the right of the screen, Vargas involved in that. And
I think that was Okada of Japan. Difficult to see there because they're so bunched up.
well, that is what can happen in whether it be a track race or indeed a race walk like this out on the road. They are very, very congested and condensed at the moment. And I suppose tactically, Mara, I'm just wondering, are the Chinese four going to make a collective decision to make a move at some point, or do you think they will just stay in there in the pack for now?
Well, they're certainly not having it their own way, are they? Bekmez of Turkey there and Rehon right up there at the front, and Njue of Kenya going with the leaders. So still relatively early days, well before halfway, but
Bekmez at the front, the Turk. And there you go, on cue, picks up the drinks. Quick slurp from one bottle, then it's just thrown to the side. You can hear the bottles clattering their way down onto the surface. There's Vargas, who was involved in that incident with the Japanese athlete right behind us. So very good eagle eyes there from you, I think, Mara, to spot that it was the Japanese walker at the front. It was one of those we looked at. So Bekmez on the right, and look at Morekon on the left-hand side there. And she is a real talent, this young lady. She's from Ecuador, the 2017 World Youth Champion at 5,000 meters. So that was in the Kasarani Stadium in Nairobi. I was there to see that very, very impressive display. She's now, you know, the fastest ever South American woman over 20K. She's still actually technically a junior or an under 20 athlete, as the IAAF would rank her. So she has got a long career potentially to come, you would hope. And already, though, she's among the leading lights, the senior ranks. And
incredibly, that competition she did earlier in the year, where she produced the world leading time this year, was only her first 20K. So previously competed over shorter distances, but that was her debut at 20K, and she went straight to the top of the 2019 ranking. So very promising from her. Let's remember that 2 years ago in London 2017, a disqualification of a member of the leading pack happened in the very, very late stages, and the finishing order changed right at the last minute. So even if these athletes are, you know, in medal position, disqualifications can happen right up to the finish line, and even afterwards. If a judge has given a fourth red card to an athlete, but it hasn't been recorded yet, and in the meantime the athlete finishes, they can actually be disqualified after they've crossed the finish line.
Well, this is a very, very tight, packed group. And the graphic I thought was interesting, we saw a few moments ago, Mara. We had them all going through. They're all being timed identically at the moment, 28:49. They're all going at an average of 4 minutes 48. So the race unfolding nicely here on the Corniche tonight. So the moments before the start of the race, final contemplation, a final look across at your rivals. Cheers from the fans watching on, and away they went at a minute before midnight. Some of the leading protagonists straight to the front, and very quickly the water required, flying everywhere out there.
So the athletes can decide to take their own bottles from the personal drink stations, or ask their coaches and officials to pass them to them. I've never seen bottles being thrown across a group like that before, but I think it's simply because they're so bunched up. That's the only way they can get them. If they have to swerve across the field, that's how accidents happen. I once in a marathon saw a woman being pushed from behind and ended up being pushed into the corner of a table. So you really have to focus on what they're doing at those drink stations. Of course, all these athletes have had to qualify to be here and be selected by their national federations. And the qualifying standard here was 1 hour 33:30. So all the athletes had to do that time and then be selected by their federations. And next year, for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, The qualification standard the qualification period, forgive me, is already underway, and the qualification standard for Tokyo is 1 hour 31. I'm not sure we'll see a time quite that fast today.
Say we might not see that.
But a lot of these athletes have already done that time, and others will be looking to qualify before June next year, and the deadline for qualifying.
So still Bekmez in front, and there's a good challenge from Australia as well here, in the form there of Jemima Montag, who we can see in the picture. But Bekmez looking quite comfortable, and the Chinese still content that 4. They're all in there in that chasing pack. They're content at the moment just to let the Turk lead the pace. We'll look back down through the field. We mentioned East Africans in the field. There's a Kenyan and Ethiopian there as well. These are the crucial moments, aren't they? Get that fluid on board quickly.
That Ethiopian athlete we just saw a moment ago, that was Belatu, Yehaule Belatu of Ethiopia. She won a bronze medal at the World Junior Championships in 2016, just 21 years of age. So the other African athlete, the Kenyan duo, 40 years of age. So Belatu is at the other end of the age range. She's the only Ethiopian race walker entered at these championships, and she won a bronze medal at the African Games in Rabat held earlier this summer.
And, well, we have our first athlete to go into the penalty zone then. So with 33.5 minutes on the clock, one of the 2 Australians. I was just talking about Jemima Montag, but that's Katie Hayward. And, in fact, she's already out. My goodness, that's a 4th. She's received 4. Now, those last 2 red cards have come very, very close together, because just a moment or so ago, she was showing up on our screens as 2. And the World Student Games champion this year has been disqualified. So that's a dramatic moment, a sad moment indeed for Katie Hayward from the Gold Coast, just 19 years of age. And here at these World Championships, well, in quite fluid fashion, Daniel Michaud and his judges have ended her World Championships. Here she is, and this is what Daniel Michaud showed. Frustration for her, that is the view. And Hayward at that point informed that her race was over, and those cards came really thick and fast for Katie Hayward there. And so that is the end of her race. So she's the first person to be disqualified.
That was really interesting, Tony. Normally after 3 red cards, the athlete has to go into the penalty zone, but there's only 1 penalty zone per lap. So if they're given 3 red cards, they continue walking, and before they reach the penalty zone, they're given a 4th, then it's a straight disqualification. So that's what we saw with Katie Hayward there of Australia. So the first disqualification already happening in this 20k race, and we're only at 6k.
That's right, yes, 14 or so K to go now, with 13 for the leaders, and all Hayward's infringements actually were for loss of contact, so it was a full house of 4. So clearly something there in the technique that judges across the field didn't like, as Bekmez continues to lead. And while we've got the opportunity with Bekmez right in the center of the screen, there she is, the 19-year-old now, and her season's best, indeed her personal best, just under the 90-minute mark. Walking at a pace some 5 minutes longer than that just at the moment.
Bekmez is the new European junior champion and already holds the senior Turkish record at 20k.
Liu to right there, well, twice her age, so there's experience and there's youth on the screen there.
The women have not always competed over 20k, Tony, at these World Championships. The very first World Championships back in 1983 in Helsinki had no race walk event for women. And then the next one in 1987. So at that time, the World Championships were held every 4 years. That was held in Rome. That was a road 10k. So the very first race walk for women was a road 10k. And that continued until 1997, and the Athens World Championships. And that event was a 10,000 meters on the track race walk. So race walking happens on the track and the road, slightly different, but that was so far the only track race walk that we've seen at these World Championships. And the athletes actually had to get through heats and then into a final in that competition.
Gosh,
and
they worked them hard that year, didn't they?
Absolutely. And one of the judges here today, Anne Froberg of Finland, she was the chief judge at that Athens World Championship. She's a very long-serving judge, and the Tokyo Olympics will be her first Olympic Games as a race-walking judge. And then after Athens in 1999 in Seville, that saw the first 20K road walk for women. That continued until 2015. And then in 2017, the last edition in London, there was a 20K and a 50K. So the 50K appearing for the first time for women in 2017. There was a campaign before that to get parity between men and women. The 50K at that time was the only remaining event where men and women did not have their own events. Previously, other relatively recently introduced events for women have been the steeplechase, which came in 2005, and the pole vault, which I believe was back in '99. So,
and that was competed, of course, in the Khalifa Stadium tonight as well. And we'll remind you one or two of the little headline makers, of course, from that. Just we've got Bekmez there, Mara, at the front, and we can actually show you her progression, I think, through her career. She glances across at what is now, well, there's a trio of Chinese walkers there, joined by Morekon. But it's Bekmez who looks at the watch with 12 laps to go now, and 38 minutes, 31 seconds. We'll show her progression in a little bit. But you can see they're all basically timing virtually the same at the moment, because they are going through as a pack. So this is going to be close. Could get a lot faster as things go later on. But as we look down from our drone camera, which just gives you an idea of the perspective of this race course, this is the Corniche, and it is the horseshoe shape on the edge of the Persian Gulf. Just as you see, we pull out there, the floodlights beaming down to provide a stunning backdrop, one of the most stunning backdrops we have ever seen at a World Championships. Just look at that, and looking back towards the skyscrapers there in the top right of the screen. And that is the waterline right over on the right-hand side. You've got the port area as well, just which is effectively where they're heading towards at the moment. And also the Amiri Diwan, which was formerly known as Al Bidda Fort, which is some 2 or 3 centuries old now. Now, there are a couple of Turks. We've been talking a lot about Bekmez, but fellow countryman Tekdal is on 2. And with one Australian gone, well, the other is going to have to be careful. Oh, in fact, that's the New Zealander Barber who's going to have to be careful because there are 2 red cards issued there. A strew of other red cards down through the field. Remember, 3 of those, and we go into the penalty zone.
I mentioned earlier, Tony, that Liu at the front of that field has just returned from maternity leave. One of the American athlete, Maria Michta-Kofi, she gave birth in June this year, and here we are in September, and she's out here competing at the World Championship. So incredible return to action from her.
So Bekmez alongside Liu at the front. Just mentioned that we can show you just where Bekmez's progression has come. Right to the screen, Bekmez, who has taken it out from the front. Liu alongside her. So there we are, 2018. She was a 1:31 walker over 20 kilometers. And this year, well, she's improved by around the 90-second mark. But just as we do that, now, this is interesting to watch. She's just dropped off and she's glancing up there because the Chinese, is this the moment they're going to start to make their move? They could well do. Tekdal also of Turkey on the left of the screen. But Qieyang and Liu have made a move now for the front. Morekon having a look. And this is where we could see some very interesting tactics, isn't it, Mark?
Absolutely, yeah. Interesting that Bekmez was really pushing it on at the front there, and now she's tucked in behind one of the Chinese to let them do the work. Interestingly, Bekmez's season's best is only 1:29, some way down the season's best list in this lineup today, but still only 19 years old and improving rapidly, so I think she could be a star of the future.
But for the moment, we have Liu Hong, to give her the full name, at the front. 32 years of age now, a double world record holder, and, well, she's got quite a CV, hasn't she? Olympic champion, twice a world champion, and that just brings, as an athlete, when you've got that kind of CV, the confidence it must give you, even in all the ups and downs of a sporting career, but the confidence that you have, you know you've been there, you know you've done it, you know you can beat these people.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a really big achievement like winning a medal, breaking a record, it's a fantastic thing to do, and many athletes never do it, let's face it. Many athletes only do it once, but if you repeatedly are winning medals, winning races, breaking records, that's the sign of a real champion. Tony, I mentioned earlier the history of the women's walking events in the World Championships. A Portuguese athlete, Susana Feitor, she has appeared in the World Championships 11 times. She's the woman with the most appearances at an IAAF World Championship. She appeared from 1991 to 2011, 11 times, and that included a bronze medal in Helsinki in 2005. She contested that Athens track 10,000 metre race walk that we talked about earlier, and a 10k road and a 20k road. Interesting that Jesus Garcia, we saw yesterday in the men's 50k race walk, that was his 13th appearance. And also João Vieira, who won the silver medal, it was his 11th appearance. So many of these race walkers, perennial competitors at these World Championships.
And we saw a warning paddle issued there by Steve Taylor, the British judge, just standing poised and watching carefully as Liu has taken up the lead with Yang of China there. So it's a Chinese 1-2 at the moment. Morekon right up there. And that front group, we can just top them up now, 2, 5, 7, about 8 or 9 in that front group at the moment who've broken away. And you can see some of the other athletes, including the Kenyan, are now trailing in that other group. So, refreshments at the ready. And we'll take a look at the split times as well, because they've gone through 9 kilometers. We're approaching the halfway stage of this race now, and the splits just a little nudging forward, because Liu is the leader. Another paddle comes out there, and 43 minutes 11 they went through 9 kilometers in, and they're averaging 4:47. The last split, though, for the last kilometer, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And Tekdal of Turkey is now on 3 red cards. So Tekdal is going to be going to the penalty zone at the next available opportunity. So it's some way to go before she gets there. But when she does, Daniel Michaud, the chief judge, will take her in there, and she will have 2 minutes, 120 seconds, in which she will have to sit it out, and that, of course, is going to knock her right back down the field.
And Sandra Arenas of Colombia, she's 4th on the world rankings. She also has got 1 red card now.
Desena is up there in that front pack. Tekdal is hanging on, but in the background, she'll be able to, you may have even been able to see on the screens there, it depends on the angle and whether she was under any impression that she had caused a 3rd red card with a lack of technique. So she's going to go into the penalty zone the next time they walk round, so effectively on the other side of this loop at the moment as they head along the Corniche. And look at that now, strewn across the front. It's the 3 Chinese vests and the 4th in behind. And will they start to try and make a move? 1 disqualification, 1 more to go to the penalty area. Barber of New Zealand with 2 reds. The one Australian still standing in the race, Jemima Montag, She's on 1 red card at the moment. It's quite a tight bend there, isn't it? Just as we watch them go round, they have to be careful. And last night, one of the features, wasn't it, Mara, was that it got a bit wet.
That's right, yeah. One of the bends last night was immediately after one of the drink stations, and the athletes grab a few sips and then throw their bottles on the ground, and the road really got pretty wet. And, well, it's quite wet just there, but once the water is on the ground, of course the tarmac is very hot, so the water will be evaporating and making the humidity even worse.
Now, Tekdal, we were aware, was on 3 reds, but in fact she's out of the race, and there it is, live. There she is. She's taken out of the race. Tekdal is disqualified. She's received a 4th. She got the 3rd red early on that lap, so she had a long way to go before getting to the penalty zone. And so by the time she'd reached it, another judge had deemed a red, and there you saw it right as it happened. Daniel Michaud taking her out of the race. She's gone. So the 2nd disqualification comes at 47 minutes into this race. Well, you don't get it any closer to the eye than that.
Certainly don't. So 2 athletes now from 3 to 4 red cards before they reach the penalty zone. In that lead group, just at the back of the lead group, slightly dropped there is the German athlete with a tall hat on. That's Saskia Fage of Germany. She's coached by 1988 double Olympic silver over 20 and 50k medalist Ron Beagle. Interestingly, she has the same hat on as one of the German athletes we saw in the men's 50k walk yesterday, and I think he was putting ice cubes into his hat. So an attempt to keep cool from the German team.
There's Morekon just slipping to the back of that front group, and there, Mara, that's the German you mentioned there, with the headgear and the ice pack on the back.
Exactly, and she's that fabric she's got at the back of her hat, I think that's an attempt to make get the cold water onto her neck. A lot of blood flows through your neck and your head. You want to keep your whole neck and head area very cool in a race like this. Before I was competing in hot weather, I would always completely wet my hair with cold water, because sweat evaporating is how you get rid of body heat. So any water on your skin, obviously sweat is included, but any water on your skin, once that evaporates, that will cool you down.
We are at the halfway stage then in this race walk for women, the 20 kilometers race. This is the only race of the night, 2nd night of race walking. It's been busy for those 9 judges out there, including the chief judge. 2 disqualifications in the first half of the race already. We've also seen a real flurry of warning paddles. They are only warnings. They carry no sanction, but there's been a lot of infringements and a lot of warnings that athletes are pushing the boundaries in a sense. So they've got to keep their technique. Just picking up on that point you made there, Mara, I mean, everybody is different. Did you find hydrating was a particular step? Were you pretty good at staying hydrated, or was it something you always were having to work on? How much fluid would you have to take on when you were taking on a marathon, for example? Yeah,
you've got to figure out exactly how much fluid to take in, because your stomach can only digest a certain amount. So there's no point drinking a huge amount, because it will just be sloshing around in your stomach. So, and then you have to estimate how much you're sweating per hour. So I used to do that by, I would weigh myself, go out for a run, come back, weigh myself again, and then I would know how much I was sweating. Sweating it varies from person to person. Some people sweat a lot, others very little. So you can estimate how much fluid you have to take on to replace that sweat lost. And of course, you don't have to be fully hydrated by the time you reach the finish line. You want to be fully hydrated on the start line. But any fluid in your body is extra weight you have to carry, and a small amount of dehydration is tolerable. So Morekon there looks like she's getting dropped from that lead group. I wonder if they've accelerated the pace at the front. They went through halfway in 47.51, so an estimated finishing time in something like 1 hour 35 minutes. So Morekon there looking like she's struggling. If she had won this race, as we thought she might, she would be the first South American woman ever to win a medal at a World Championships. But Morekon and Beckmer's there also.
There as well, yeah.
So the 2 youngsters feeling the pressure, and the 4 Chinese really pushing it on in that lead group. There is, of course, prize money on offer here. The top 8 finishes in every individual event receive prize money. $60,000 for the winner, $30,000 for second, $20,000 for bronze, and then down to 8th place, which receives $4,000. So it's not just medals these athletes are competing for.
So, as we suspected, the Chinese would try and push things out there. The Brazilian de Sena is alongside them, though, so just upsetting the apple cart a little bit and actually going to the front now. And really pushing here. Look at this move from de Sena, and let's just watch how the Chinese respond to this, because de Sena is going away. A big move here by Erika de Sena, 3rd at the 2016 World Team Championship. She was 4th 2 years ago at the World Championships in London, and she has really pushed forward. Now, the question is this just a fleeting moment as we go past the halfway stage? We're at the 11-kilometer mark now, 9 laps to go out of the 20. Down on the Corniche, it's Brazil from a quartet of dangerous Chinese race walkers, and Morecon and Bekmez, 2 of the early contenders, slipping down that field.
Tony, the last split to 11K was 4:41. They were previously doing about 4:47, so they've really stepped up the pace there. And you can see the damage de Sena has done, but those four Chinese athletes slotting in nicely behind. We've
just mentioned coming through news for us, Mara, that we've had a first retirement, so a couple of disqualifications, but Shenjie Nasri, the 2016 African Championships bronze medalist, the 23-year-old who's here competing for Tunisia, she has exited the race of her own volition, so she has retired from the race. So again, it's a reminder as we watch on, these athletes are so fit, they're so strong and powerful, and of course we can't show you the warmth that they are racing in, only the illustration, of course, of the sweat and the measures they are taking to deal with the hydration. Let's just talk about de Sena as well, as she takes a bottle of water there, made that big break. There is a little story of her career. You can see how she's progressed from a 1:38.59 20k race walker, and she's brought it all the way down. In 2016, she was 1:27.18, and she's got her down to 1:26.59 in there, you see there in 2017. So that's actually her best mark, so her best year 2 years ago, but she's not far away from that this year in World Championship year.
Erika de Sena is 34 years old, so reasonably experienced and one of the older athletes in this field. And you can see from that progression, reasonably steady progression, and then it plateaus off a bit in the last couple of years. So possibly she's kind of at or near her potential and just has to learn from experience. We all have genetically a potential, and how close you can get to that over years and years of training is what all athletes are aiming for. She's married to another race walker.
Yes, an Ecuadorian race walker. So certainly that is in the family. I'm sure there's lots of coaching and practice going on between de Sena and her husband.
Her husband Chocho was competing in the men's 50k race yesterday. This World Championship 20k is part of the IAAF Race Walking Challenge, which is a series of race walk events held in various countries all over the world. Back in February, we had the Oceania 20k Race Walking Championships in Adelaide. Then it moved to Japan in March, La Coruña in June. And this is the penultimate race in that league. And Erika de Sena currently is standing in 2nd place in the rankings in that IAAF Race Walking Challenge. Ahead of her is Shenjie Qieyang, who is right behind her in that group of 4 with the sunglasses on. So Erika de Sena pushing on at the front.
You mentioned her husband as well there, Mara. Andres Chocho of Ecuador. He was one of those who didn't finish yesterday. 28 men finished the race walk. But de Sena, well, she's out in front at the moment, and she's got the 4 Chinese chasing her. That's the front group, but we can see what's going on further back. And this is the chaser.
And Erika de Sena is on 1 red card. And there's the German athlete again. German athlete Saskia Fage So interesting, they're throwing her ice pack out of her hat there. Yeah, so she's got a bit of a special cooling mechanism going on there.
Were you a hat? Did you ever go for the hat? You did a bit, didn't you?
So I always went for a visor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, I can see the picture now. It was. So it wasn't a hat. It wasn't a not hat. It was a visor. You were right in between.
So the logic of that for me was I like to wear a hat because it keeps the sun off my face and it just helps me to concentrate. But my logic was you don't want your head to be covered by any kind of fabric because that is going to stop sweat evaporating off the top of your head. So I would have a visor so that my face was shaded from the sun, but the top of my head was open to the elements, and I would always wet my hair, and that water would evaporate during the course of the race and hopefully keep me cool. Some people say that putting ice on your skin actually makes your brain think that you are cool, and therefore your body reacts in a way which you wouldn't want. But, you know, you're out there competing in 31 degrees. All you want to do is have cold water and ice on you. So a number of interesting different mechanisms these athletes have chosen to attempt to keep cool.
So we are now well into this race. There are 8 kilometers to go. It's probably going to be around the 32 minutes from now kind of mark that if they continue on this pace, we're going to see them finish in 4:37 for De Sena. We saw her accelerate in the leading pack. This is the group of chasers, and will they be able to haul them in? Okada from Japan. She's got Fuji of Japan as well for company there, alongside the German that we've been talking about. A little bit further back, Montag of Australia, we can see in the Aussie vest just further back there. Confirmation again of the 2 disqualifications, including one of them which we actually saw happen and unfold right in front of our eyes. Tekdal of Turkey out along with Hayward, who went, of course, very early on. And lots more red cards down the field as well.
Quite a lot of athletes on 2 red cards, Tony. Lira of Brazil, Garcia Caro of Spain, Ortiz of Guatemala. So all of those athletes, if they get one more card, they're going into the penalty zone.
So we are approaching the hour mark in this 20K race walk for women. Brazil from China. So on a warm night, a big pack at the front, youth and experience coming together. Ice, water, the Chinese contingent happy to stay with the pack in the early stages. The judges have really been busy, disqualifications, cards. The end of the night for Tekdal in dramatic fashion. And that the view, the Corniche illuminated. And as we pan down from our super shots that we can bring you from this drone camera, down we go towards the leading pack in this 20K race. And we are right on the hour mark now. 4 Chinese walkers with De Sena and Arenas for company. The lead group with 8 kilometers to go. And the 2 Japanese now in a group of chasers, Okada and Fuji. Japanese record holder Kumiko Okada, one of those we featured on the start line an hour or so ago. But at the moment, they're 17 seconds behind that leading group. A further 3 seconds on from that, as you can see, Group 3, Morejón Parmesano. We haven't really talked about her, talented Italian, and the Spaniard Perez. So they're 20 seconds behind the lead group.
The 2 Japanese, Tony, have dropped the German very quickly. Sorry, Group 2 there, showing the German with those 2 Japanese. I think they've just left the German athlete behind.
Yes, I think they have. I think Fejs has dropped off that group, so it's just a group of 2 now, isn't it? It's two Japanese walkers. What a great night for them last night, wasn't it? And Suzuki was fantastic in the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
There's a paddle, though, so that's for Fuji. Now, remember, that's not a penalty. That's a loss of contact warning from one of the officials. It happened really around the time she was taking on fluid. At the front there, Desena, who remember made a little break. Well, she's back amid those 4 Chinese walkers, and then Sandra Lorena Arenas, who we haven't really talked about too much yet. So she's the Colombian, and she won the Pan American Games title this year. She's a former South American junior champion over the 10K mark. She's just turned 26 years of age this month, and so she is up there as well, keeping that quartet of Chinese walkers and Brazil's Desena company.
She's 4th on the world rankings at the moment, Tony, and that Pan American champion race she did, that was a national record, 1:28.03.
So it's been a good year form-wise for her, taking those statistics into account, Mauro. You'd think that this is a race that she can certainly have a big say in, and a race that is rapidly making its way to a conclusion now, and it's all up for grabs. 3 places on the podium, and there is still a front group there. The penalties have been accruing. There they are, 2 disqualifications, and the Spaniard Garcia Caro will be in the penalty zone for 2 minutes. Montag, Lira, Arenas actually in that group, has got to be careful. She's on 2 reds. Barber as well, Ortiz, and some single reds as well in there.
We just saw that lead group lapping Victoria Madaras of Hungary. She has a PB of 1:30.05. So the Chinese relentlessly pushing the pace at the front here.
17 seconds the advantage, and it was a further 36 seconds from the leaders back to 9th place, and Palmisano in 10:38. So let's have a look at Garcia, and with the 3 reds, she will face a penalty zone, and it's 120 seconds in the penalty zone for the Spaniard. So that is going to happen for her shortly, and there we are. There is Daniel Michaud, and the other official helping him there. Now on that board he will have had a sign saying 2, so 2 minutes, and she's ushered now into the penalty zone, and the clock has started counting down for her on the screen just behind that official. There is some refreshment there. That's not always the case in a penalty zone, but you can see that little countdown clock has begun for her. It's down at 1:50 already, so she just has to stay loose and then re-enter the race. Behind there, looking on, Noel Carmody. Now he's the recorder with the computer there and the laptop, and he's watching on as well. And the clock continues to count down for number 676 from Spain.
Normally there wouldn't be refreshments in the penalty zone, but since the heat and humidity here has been a concern, the organisers, as one of the measures to help these athletes survive the hot conditions, was to provide ice and cold water in that penalty zone.
So Qieyang Shenjie of China just at the front of that group at the moment, and she's a World Championship bronze medalist. She's an Olympic silver medalist as well, and a silver medalist in the 2016 World Team Championships as well. So she certainly brings a lot of experience into this race, and she's up there at the moment, but there goes Yang as well. So that group continuing to just shuttle between themselves, and it's all up for grabs between them. Chasers, there they are. It's the 2 Japanese walkers, 17 seconds, still the gap with 7 kilometers to go in this race.
So Okada and Fuji currently in 7th and 8th place, but catching the leaders. They're actually going faster than the leaders in the most recent splits we've got. They're going at 4:35 pace, the leaders at 4:38. So the Japanese closing on the leading group.
We saw Garcia ushered into the penalty zone with 3 red cards. Well, that countdown clock has been continuing over the last 120 seconds. And that means she will be free to rejoin the race. There it is, coming down now. 5 seconds to go, 4, and she's clear to go. Green light, off she goes, back into the field, but of course she's dropped right back So a big challenge ahead, and it's reasonably late stage of the race. We do expect tactically that the last 3 or 4 kilometres could see a significant pickup in pace, Mara, as the eyes on the prize become very, very focused.
Definitely, yeah. The Spanish athlete there, now she's way down the field after that two-minute penalty, and mentally that must be really tough to know that you're much further down the field. Previously, of course, before the penalty zone came into use, and this is the first time it's been used at these World Championships, although it's been used a lot in other events. Previously, after three red cards, you were out, you were disqualified. But now it's the penalty zone, so the athletes do get a chance to finish. And it's not unheard of that athletes serve a penalty and can still do very well. One of the Japanese men in the 50k walk yesterday, Katsuki, he won the 2018 Asian Games title despite serving a penalty of 5 minutes, as it is in the 50k.
Yes, it's interesting stuff, isn't it? So, in goes a paddle there, and I think a pen dropped. Arenas on the back there, that front group, there appear to be still the 4 and the Senna there as well. So they're all spread out. The road very, very wet there as well, isn't it? As we look down now on the Corniche, and they're just breaking up a bit. And the Colombian that we've been talking about, Sandra Lorena Arenas, let's just have a look at her progression. There it is on the screen. So taking it back 7 years, back to 2012, she's doing 1:32.36. And I think it's interesting, Mara, to see the pickup. 2016, she breaks that 1:30 mark that had proved elusive to that point, and then she's lowered herself down to 1:28.03 this year. So she's having her best year so far.
Yeah, what you would normally see from an athlete, if they're doing all the right things, is gradual progression year on year. But occasionally, if an athlete hasn't quite been doing everything right and then they change something, for example, they might get a new coach or go and live at altitude or something like that, if they make a big change in what they're doing, you can see a much more rapid progression. And equally, the opposite can be the case. So an athlete can be progressing nicely, then get an injury, and their progression goes into reverse for a period of time. So another yellow paddle there.
Yes, another yellow paddle there. Talk about, I mean, they have been really busy, the judges. We've got another example of it coming up here. But this gives you a good illustration of how quick they are. Out comes that judge. They had to really reach across Qieyang because he's got to tell her he's got to tell Desena that that's a warning, and he's had to go right across. But my goodness, he had to get away quickly, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Sharp eyes and sharp movements from the judges. Now Perez of Spain, and the 2018 European champion. A little bit further down the field. She's in 11th place at the moment, 39 seconds away from the leaders, keeping her technique together pretty well at the moment, it seems. Looking fairly cool, still just 23. Yet to break the 90-minute mark this year. And at the moment, just ploughing a lone furrow on her own. And Mara, that's always an interesting thing, isn't it? Some like to stay in a pack and a group and be protected. Others, just the isolation. What's the contrast like for you when you're out there?
That's right. I mean, when you're in a group, if you're tucked into a group, you don't have to think about the pace making. If it's a windy day, the other athletes will shield you from the wind. It can be an easy way to tick off the early kilometres in a race. Of course, if it can mean you go way too fast or way too slow, and then in that case it's better to be on your own. Also, you know, you might want to be in a group, but you just can't stay with them and you end up getting dropped. So you might want to do something and it's just not possible. So there are the Chinese athletes. The Chinese athletes are coached by an Italian, Sandro da Milano. He's the brother of Maurizio da Milano, who he used to coach, and he was also the Italian national coach. And he's been recruited by the Chinese team. Maurizio, his brother, is a 2-time world champion in the 20k from 87 and 91, and the 1980 Olympic Games champion. So China recruiting the absolute best in coaching in race walking with Sandro da Milano.
And there's as we see, 3 Chinese at the front. We've got 5 kilometers to go. A front 4 of them all were just broken up by Desena at the moment. But it could well be now that the bit of teamwork will come in. They could work together in this. They could work together to try and remove the other opposition. Desena is the one who's just in the way, really, at the moment. Arenas, though, I think is starting to slip.
Yeah.
And 15K, and also the interesting thing we picked up before, you can see the 2 Japanese walkers in the distance behind that front group. Now, they were going quicker, but on the last splits, the Chinese responded to that. 4:36 for the last kilometer, whereas the Japanese walkers, 4:39, 4:38 for Okada and Fuji. Fuji's got 1 infringement at the moment, 2 reds. So the Chinese now may well make this move. The 2 disqualifications still, and Desena on to herself. So that's going to potentially play into things here, because if you look at the Chinese, there's no cards at all, but Desena is now on 2, so that could restrict her ability to push, because she's got to hold her technique together.
We saw this scenario yesterday in the men's 50K. One of the Chinese athletes was on 2 red cards, and therefore he had to be a little bit more cautious against his rivals who were on none. So, and Arenas now dropped from this group. So we talked early on about a possible medal sweep by China. Even 1 to 4 is possible from China here. Absolutely dominating this race at the moment.
So Arenas dropping off, so 6 has gone down to a group of 5 now, so that has happened pretty quickly, because the 15-kilometer mark, as you can see from the graphics on the screen there, that included Arenas in that front group, but she's gone. The chasers then with a hard task, because they're seeing that front group just start to move away a little bit. They will be eating up the ground towards Arenas. 22 seconds. Group 3, it's Perez on her own there, 32 seconds back.
So Perez, the European champion, came into this race one of the favourites, 5th on the world rankings, won that European title last year in Berlin, personal best of 1:26.36, so very much up there in the elite, but not able to stick with the pace from the Chinese athletes today.
So a little bit of maths tells you she's 54 seconds back from the leading group, so there's a 22-second differential to the 2 Japanese walkers. Then you add another 32 on to get to Perez, and then over a minute now the gap to group 4, which is Montag of Australia, the 2018 Commonwealth Games champion, of course, no less.
We've never seen a medal sweep in this event, the women's 20K walk, before.
There's Montag, who we just mentioned there, the winner on the Gold Coast last year, still only 21 years of age. She's a talented girl, you know, it's not just on the sporting field, she's a very good pianist. But that's the group who are setting their stall out there. There is Montag. She lost, of course, Katie Hayward, her fellow Australian, the World Student Games champion earlier on.
Montag coached by coach Brent Valance, who has a very illustrious history of coaching world-class racewalkers, including Jared Talent, the multiple Olympic and World Championship medalist from Australia.
So it's been China successful at the last 2 World Championships, gold on the podium for Liu Hong, Yang Jiayu.
So there they go through the Finnish gantry, and they're through 16K now, so 4 laps to go in this 20K women's race walk. And the split through 16K for that lead group was 4:34, so this lead group really keeping up the pressure, but Erika Desena of Brazil is on 2 red cards, so, and they're both for loss of contact, so if she's not careful, she's going to be going into the penalty zone. But at the moment, trying to stay with the Chinese athletes. Arenas, who's dropped from that group, she's also on 2 red cards.
Yes, it's a warm, muggy night. It's just clicked past 1:15 in the morning here, local time. So we're into Monday morning. And there they are, the 4 Chinese walkers, with Desena, who's living a little bit of jeopardy now. 2 red cards for her, 1 more, and her medal hopes will be over because she'll go into the penalty zone and have to spend 2 minutes there. Among the others on 2 reds, Montag further down the field. Arenas is on 2 reds. Fuji is on 1 in the chase pack, so she is on the right of the picture there with Okada. And are they eating any ground into the leaders? 26 seconds at the moment they are behind.
It's interesting, Tony, that the scoreboard, the athletes may be looking at it not only for red cards against themselves but against the other athletes, and it's possible that the Chinese athletes know that Desena is on 2 red cards and they could be really applying the pressure on her to get her into the penalty zone. If they've missed it on the posting board or the disqualification board, their team officials may have told them.
Interesting as well, just to look there, isn't it, Mara, that Arenas is now in a group of her own. She's classed as that she will be the chaser, but really she's the chaser being chased at this stage because she's 4 seconds back, and you would fancy that the 2 Japanese walkers, Fuji and Okada, who are 21 seconds away, so 25 seconds obviously away from the leaders, with 4 kilometers to go. Well, are they going to be able to haul in Arenas and move past her? Perez, remember, on her own as well, and she's over a minute behind. And then the 5th group, Cappuccina and Montag, but it is still Qieyang, Shenjie, multiple medalist, 29 in November. There is Arenas of Colombia.
Arenas' last split, Tony, was 4:37, and the leader's doing 4:34. So just slightly losing contact with the leaders, but the 2 Japanese behind her, their last split was 4:37 as well. So she's maintaining that gap. Interesting that the Japanese athletes are working together. They tend to race a lot domestically, but haven't, at least on the women's side, haven't made a major impact in world level championships so far. Of course, the Japanese men, much more depth. So Fuji and Okada now in 7th and 8th place, and Arenas up in 6th place for Colombia.
So can the Japanese reel Arenas in? And we saw in the men's 50k last night a lot of change as the likes of Evan Dunphy moved quickly up through the rest of the walkers. But this is different. We're only talking 20k here, so your time, your tactics, it has to be drastically adjusted because this is a much shorter course. The 1k loop as well, of course, they're looping more. The demands on the technique. And now 3 of the Chinese moving away, but they've dropped 1 off the back. So we have Qieyang, Shenjie, and we have the world record holder, Liu Hong. And we also have Liujing Yang, number 517. So they have just started to move away and break off from the defending world champion, Yang Jiayu. So we have 2 Yangs, 1 in 3rd and 1 in 5th. It's the defending champion, 516, who has dropped back. And Desena is feeling the pace as well now. And there's a little bit of a grimace of pain on the Brazilian's face. This is starting to test her. She's on 2 red cards as well. She's going to find it very difficult to respond to this because there's a trio of Chinese walkers with intent on their faces who are moving away now, 80 minutes into this 20k race. Look at the anguish starting to show on Desena. Her husband had to retire from the 50k race. She'll be determined to get to the line, determined to push for a medal place.
And the defending champion there, Jiayu Yang, just trying to hang on to Desena. Surprising to see the defending champion not able to go with the leaders, but the depth in China is just so phenomenal. And as she turns that corner, obviously two U-turns on this course. The one at the southern end is a slightly larger, more gradual curve because there was more space on the road there. But at the north end, a much tighter U-turn.
And we'd said that there could be a big gear change as we went into the last 3 or 4 kilometers of this race, and that is happening. The last split, the last 1,000, the last kilometer has been 4:26. So that's a significant move when you consider that the average across this race has been about 4:42. So they've really turned it up now. And you can see now it's 2 Chinese moving away. So Qieyang and the world record holder, Liu Hong, making it a 1-2. And now it's Yang Liujing who can't keep up, and the 2 Chinese are in 3rd and 4th with Arenas in 5th. So these 2 are taking it out now. 4:26, remember, for the last split. Much quicker than what we've seen earlier in this race, but this is what we expected could happen.
And one of the Chinese has been given a red card, Qieyang, the defending champion. 1 red card for her, as has Fuji, and Arenas and Desena still on 2 apiece. And further down the field, Jemima Montag in 11th place, she's on 2 red cards. So quite a few athletes there on 2 cards. If they get a 3rd, they'll be into the penalty zone. So in this late stage, they want to be speeding up, giving it their all, but they really have to be careful. Otherwise, they're going to get that 2-minute penalty. If the athletes are given a 3rd red card after they've passed the penalty zone for the final time, 2 minutes will be added to their finish time.
That's right, there's so many factors, aren't there? And you mentioned there, you have to maintain your technique, you've got to keep control. Those are things uppermost in your mind as you get towards the end, and we are now really moving into the business end. And interestingly, it looks like the 4, well, it looked like we had a front pairing moving away, but the other 2 Chinese are coming back into it now. Desena's dropping away, but look at that spread right across the 4 Chinese. This doesn't look like teamwork to me anymore, Mara.
Yeah, the drink stations always cause a bit of a mess up in the field, and I think Qieyang there on the right with the sunglasses on, I think she's the one who really means business. She's top of the world rankings, and she's also top of the IAAF racewalking challenge standings at the moment. But she's up against some formidable opposition in the double world record holder, Olympic champion, a 4-time world championship medalist. So Liu, it looks like she's going to...
They're talking, they're chatting. You see that?
Yeah, Chinese fans out there in force. So I think definitely some kind of teamwork going on. And Liu Hong looks like she's going to increase her world championship medal haul to 5. So, as we suspected, it looks like a Chinese medal sweep is on the cards. But the race is far from over yet.
And there they go past Beckmez as well there, Mara. I mean,
so
Beckmez was among the leaders earlier.
Yeah, lapping Beckmez. And the most recent split we have is 4:24. So getting faster all the time for the Chinese athletes dominating this race. And Qieyang,
a 3rd red card.
3rd red card for Qieyang. So she's going to get a 2-minute penalty. So
there's now, yes, so there's a medal place now potentially. Well, it's still on for a sweep, but the 4 Chinese going into 3, of course, there was going to be a spare person who wasn't going to get on the podium, and you have to say now the likelihood is going to be that that's going to be Qieyang.
Yep, so on the penultimate, sorry, they're past 18K. So this is the penultimate lap. She will have to go into the penalty zone and then onto her final lap. So she's going to, the gap down to Desena is only 6 seconds from the leader, and down to Arenas 20 seconds. If we go down the field to get a 2-minute difference, we go down to about 10th place, and 11th place Jemima Montag. So Qieyang is going to be out of the medals when she serves her penalty.
Yes, and you can see there confirmation on the screen. There's a 3rd card. Garcia's also had 3, and so Qieyang, with the defending world champion, is going to have to face 2 minutes in the penalty zone.
Yesterday, after the women's 50K, I interviewed one of the medalists from China, and I said, how did you find the conditions? And she said, Oh, it was fine. I was quite relaxed. I've walked in tougher conditions in Huangshen in China, which was a big race earlier this year. And I must say, these Chinese athletes, they don't really look like they're suffering too much from this heat and humidity. I think they're used to it from racing back home.
And look at Liu Hong here. Liu has made the move. She's left her fellow countrywoman behind for now. Big glance up there to the right-hand side. Liu now makes what could be a pivotal move in the latter stages of this race. The drama is building on the Corniche. The two-time world champion, a world record holder as well. Morekon lapped. She was among the leading pack, but the pace too much for the youngster. Her day will come, but Liu Hong has decided to go for it. She's out there now as Qieyang Shenjie, who's trying to chase her down, receives a warning paddle behind. And remember, the defending world champion, Yang Xiaoyu, is going to go into the penalty zone.
And Liu, Tony, recently stepped up to the 50K, so she's been doing a lot of more endurance type training, and despite that, she's absolutely smashing this 20K, recently back from maternity leave as well. So Liu making a formidable return to competition after having a child, and she's going well away from the chasing Chinese teammates, and as soon as we get her split through 19K, we'll bring it for you, but I think she's increasing the pace all the time. The last split was 4:24 at 18K, and she's approaching.
Oh, and a paddler, she's got a paddle there. Did you see that little, interesting, an acknowledgement from an official who came right from the other side of the road there, almost on the pavement there on the side of the road, came right across to issue that paddle. Just a warning sign there. And a fourth card and a disqualification. Yes, the defending champion is out. Her race is run. Defending world champion, Yang Xiaoyu. A fourth card. That is the problem you can have if you've got a long way to go. As we hear the bell there. But it signals a third disqualification to join Tekdal and Hayward. Yang Xiaoyu, the defending world champion, is out of the race. Great disappointment for her. She'll have to make her way down the side there. And here's how it happened as Daniel Michaud issues the card. And it's game over. Just short of 90 minutes of walking, and she's out. So, another significant blow potentially struck for Liu Hong, who is striding away, and that, to me, Mara, looks a very, very confident and composed face. And a big split, wasn't it?
4:17. So 4:17 for Liu through the Finnish gantry for the final lap through 19K. Her last split 4:17. So Liu really putting the pressure on. And 4:21 for Shenjie Qieyang through the final 19K split when she heard the bell for the final lap, and 4:23 for the third Chinese, Yang Liujing. So all three of them really increasing the pace. And in fourth place at the moment, Erika de Senna of Brazil. She was on 4:31. So the Chinese really laying on the pressure, and unless anything drastic changes in the disqualification stakes, I think these Chinese women have got this medal sweep sewn up.
Yes, there is Qieyang Shenjie. So often she's been denied the gold. She's got a real collection of medals, but she's not been able to get onto the top of the podium, and it looks as though she's going to be on that podium with a medal. But Liu now, Liu is going for it. 90 minutes into this race, on the last lap. You can see the banks of the cameramen there, because the next time she heads their direction, the bulbs are going to be flashing, and unless something really dramatic happens, they're going to be flashing the cameras at that young woman as the world champion. She's looking pretty good as well, isn't she?
She certainly is. She's really putting on the pressure. It's a balance, isn't it? And these final stages, Tony, between risking any red cards. Of course, you can get 3-4 red cards in a fairly short time, but she is currently on 0 red cards, and she seems pretty confident of her technique as she piles on the pressure.
inside the last kilometre for Liu Hong. And there is the athlete in second, Qieyang Shenjie.
And a quick glance behind from Qieyang, which I think may possibly mean she's settling for silver. Just wants to check nobody's behind her. And at 19K, the gap from Liu to Qieyang was 4 seconds, and back to Yang was another 3 seconds. So not much in it.
But the medal places could well be decided because Desena is 20 seconds back, so 4th place for her. So at the moment we have a Chinese 1, 2, 3. And Liu Hong will go past the water station one last time.
And we've got to remember that sudden death rule in the last 100 metres, the chief judge, if he believes the athletes are breaking the rules in that last 100 metres, he can disqualify them outright, even if they have no red cards. But Liu, Qieyang and Yang currently on 0 red cards.
But the stage is set for Liu Hong, the 32-year-old. A career glittered with gold, and she's striding purposefully. What a look of determination on her face. She was in the pack with the group for so long. A little grimace, a world record holder, and for the 3rd time, she is the IAAF world champion over 20 kilometers. It's China's night in Qatar. Liu Hong, a hat-trick of world titles for her. And they'll be waving the flag a little bit longer because coming in behind there is Qieyang Shenjie to get silver. Another podium position for her. And it's a hat-trick of Chinese vests on the podium because Yang Liujing has the bronze. The emotion and the trio will come together, wrapped in their nation's flag. Another proud night for Chinese race walking. Brazil's Desena comes in 4th place. The winning time, 1:32.53 for Hong Yu. 17-second differential back to the silver medalist. And there is the champion. Crowned on the Corniche at just past 1:30 in the morning, local time. And that is a picture that the Chinese sporting community will revel in. I think it's early morning in China right now. There's the podium. Gold, silver and bronze, all going back to China from here in Qatar. The finishers still coming in, the Japanese, the chase that they couldn't achieve. Arenas and Desena on 2 red cards managed to avoid any more. Fuji comes in there to claim 7th place. And of course, remember, one of the Chinese athletes, the defending world champion, who is Yang Jiayu, she had to serve the time penalty of 2 minutes, which basically meant it left the 3 Chinese to compete for the 3 spots on the podium, as their teammates spent an agonizing 120 seconds watching the field escape away from her. There's your champion, and there is the Spaniard, Perez. A look of tiredness as she gets to the line where the winners are still gathered and the flags are still draped around their vests. Of course, I mentioned the 4th Chinese walker, Yang, of course, it was a fourth card she got ultimately, which meant she was actually disqualified, so she won't even have the satisfaction of finishing, coming out of the race disqualified right near the conclusion. But the Chinese officials there and coaches delighted. But it's been another good night for the Japanese race walking community. 6th and 7th, Okada and Fuji. But if last night was Japan's night, certainly in the men's 50K, tonight belongs to China. And this is the moment that Liu Hong made it a hat-trick of World Championship victories. Breaking the tape. And she cruised it in the end. A decisive break late in the race. And that smile tells you she's got another gold medal at an IAAF World Championships. And they come together there with the two Japanese finishers in the top 10. Let's confirm the results then of this women's 20 kilometers race walk. Hong Liu, 1 hour 32 minutes and 53 seconds. From Qieyang, Shenjie, Liujing gets the bronze.